It rained last Tuesday. A good rain. 40 minutes of steady rainfall across a standard suburban roof. And while that rain was falling, a person was collecting it, not with an expensive system, not with a professionally installed cistern, not with any permit, any contractor, any specialized equipment, but with a $12 setup that took one afternoon to build from parts found at any hardware store, most of which were already sitting in a garage doing nothing. By the time the rain stopped, that person had collected over 200 liters of free water, enough to irrigate a full vegetable garden for a week, enough to wash a car, enough to flush toilets, enough to represent a measurable reduction in the number that appears on a monthly water bill. And the rain that fell on every other roof on that street ran straight into the gutter, down the drain, into the stormwater system, and disappeared, as it does every single time it rains, while the people inside those houses pay a utility company for the privilege of receiving water back through a different pipe. This is rainwater harvesting. Not the kind that requires a $10,000 underground cistern and a licensed plumber. The kind that requires a downspout, a food-grade barrel, a $4 diverter fitting, a length of hose, and a spigot you can buy for $3 at a hardware store. The kind that any person with a roof and a downspout and one free afternoon can build before the next rainfall. The kind that has been used by every civilization that ever needed water between rainstorms, which is every civilization that has ever existed, and that the modern municipal water industry has spent decades making seem unnecessary, overcomplicated, or even vaguely illegal in ways designed to protect a revenue stream, not a water supply. Your roof is collecting water right now, every time it rains. The only question is whether you are doing anything with it before it disappears. The scale of what falls on a typical roof is something most people have never been told because the number is genuinely startling. A standard home with a roof area of 100 square meters, a modest, average house, receives approximately 1 liter of collectible rainwater per square meter per millimeter of rainfall. In practical terms, a single moderate rainfall of 20 millimeters deposits 2,000 liters of water on that roof. 2,000 liters in one rain event, running off into the gutter and disappearing, while the homeowner waters their garden from a metered tap. In a region that receives 500 millimeters of rain per year, a relatively modest annual rainfall by global standards, that same roof sheds 50,000 liters of collectible fresh water annually. 50,000 liters. At the average residential water rate in most developed countries, that represents hundreds of dollars of water value falling on the roof every year and being discarded. The $12 system captures a meaningful fraction of that. And the fraction it captures is enough to cut outdoor water use, garden irrigation, car washing, outdoor cleaning, by half or more, which in households where outdoor use represents 40 to 60% of total water consumption translates directly and immediately into a lower bill. Rainwater harvesting is not a fringe idea. It is not a prepper concept or an off-grid fantasy. It is documented, studied, government promoted, and actively practiced in countries. So across the full spectrum of economic development, Germany offers tax incentives for rainwater harvesting system installation and has a national standard for system design. Australia, a country that has faced severe drought conditions for decades, has made rainwater tank installation mandatory in new construction in several states. Japan has a national rainwater utilization program that has been running since the 1980s, with government-subsidized collection systems on public buildings, including the Tokyo Sumo Stadium, which collects roof rainwater to flush its toilets. Singapore, one of the most water-stressed urban environments in the world, has built national water security strategy around rainwater capture infrastructure. India's traditional water harvesting structures, johads, baolis, and rooftop collection systems, date back thousands of years and are currently being systematically revived by NGOs and state governments as a response to groundwater depletion. The United Nations Environment Program promotes household rainwater harvesting as a primary water security tool for populations across Asia, Africa, and Latin America. The evidence base, the governmental endorsement, and the real-world deployment of this practice are global and overwhelming. The only place where it has been largely absent from the mainstream consciousness is in developed countries where municipal water infrastructure is so complete and so normalized that people have forgotten water has to come from somewhere before it comes from a tap. Here's why the $12 version never shows up on the evening news or in the home improvement magazine or in the sponsored content on your social media feed. The residential water utility model is a subscription. You pay for water by the cubic meter every month, reliably. Every liter you collect from your own roof is a liter you don't buy. At the scale of one household, the revenue impact on the utility is small. At the scale of millions of households systematically collecting roof water, the impact on municipal water consumption, and therefore on the revenue that justifies the infrastructure investment and the rate structure of the utility, becomes significant. Water authorities in several jurisdictions went so far as to legally restrict residential rainwater collection in the early 2000s, with some regions in the western United States explicitly prohibiting the practice on the grounds that rainwater falling on private property belonged to downstream water rights holders, a legal framework that is as philosophically remarkable as it sounds, and that has been progressively dismantled as the absurdity of telling people they cannot collect rain became politically untenable. The restrictions are largely gone now, but the cultural residue of the idea that collecting rainwater is complicated, regulated, or somehow presumptuous remains. And in that residue, the industry finds its protection. They stopped teaching this not through active suppression, but through the quiet cultural message that water is something you purchase, not something that falls on your roof for free 8 times a year. You've seen the basic principle of this your entire life without connecting it to a practical system. Think about a bucket left outside during a rainstorm. You've seen water collect in it. You've emptied it, probably without thinking about what you were discarding. Now imagine that bucket is a 200-liter food-grade barrel. And imagine the rain isn't falling randomly into an open container, but being directed into it from an entire rooftop through a downspout that is already channeling every drop that falls on your house to a single point. The bucket is the system. The roof is the catchment. The downspout is the delivery mechanism that already exists. All you're doing is inserting a container between the water that is already being collected by your roof and the drain that currently discards it. There is no new infrastructure. There's no new principle. There's just a barrel and a connection, and the difference between the water bill you have now and a lower one. Here's how the physics and the system work together. Simply stated, rain falls on your roof, an impermeable surface that, unlike soil, does not absorb the water, but sheds it. The slope of the roof directs all shed water to the gutters at the eaves. The gutters collect it and channel it to downspouts, vertical pipes that carry it to ground level. Normally, the downspout terminates at or near the ground, and the water disperses into the garden, the driveway, or a storm drain. A first flush diverter, a simple pipe fitting that diverts water flow, intercepts the downspout at a convenient height and redirects the water into a storage barrel instead of continuing to the ground. A small overflow port near the top of the barrel allows excess water to exit once the barrel is full, so the system cannot overflow or back up during heavy rain. A spigot near the bottom of the barrel allows water to be drawn off by gravity into a watering can, a hose, a bucket, whatever you're using the collected water for. The system is passive, gravity-fed, requires no pump and no electricity, and operates automatically every time it rains, without any action from you beyond occasionally drawing water out and occasionally cleaning the inlet screen. Here is how you build it for $12. You need a food-grade barrel or large container with a lid. A 55-gallon food-grade plastic barrel sourced from a restaurant supply company, a food processing business, or a classified ad is ideal and often free or $5. A clean plastic garbage bin with a lid works at smaller scale. You need a downspout diverter, a simple plastic fitting available at hardware stores for between $4 and $8 that allows you to redirect downspout flow into a barrel while allowing overflow to continue down the original path when the barrel is full. You need a spigot, a plastic hose bib fitting available for $2 to $3, and a drill bit to create the hole it threads into near the base of the barrel. You need a piece of fine mesh screen to cover the barrel inlet, preventing mosquito breeding and keeping debris out of your stored water. Total material cost, including the diverter, the spigot, and the screen, $10 to $15 depending on source and whether the barrel costs anything. Installation: choose a downspout close to your garden or outdoor water use area. Cut the downspout at the height where you want to install the diverter. Allow enough height for the barrel to sit below the diverter outlet, elevated slightly on a simple platform of bricks or blocks to give the spigot enough clearance to fill a watering can beneath it. Install the diverter fitting according to its simple instructions. It is a push-fit or screw-fit connection requiring no tools beyond a saw to cut the downspout. Drill the spigot hole near the base of the barrel, thread the spigot in with a rubber washer to seal it, and hand tighten. Cut an inlet hole in the barrel lid size to receive the diverter outlet hose, cover it with mesh screen secured with a rubber band or zip tie, and connect the diverter outlet to it. Set the barrel in position below the diverter. Elevate it on your brick platform. Done. The next rainfall fills it. Here is what most people get wrong, because the mistakes are consistent across first attempts, and all of them are easily avoided. First mistake, not elevating the barrel. A barrel sitting flat on the ground with a spigot at its base gives you approximately zero clearance to get a watering can under the spigot. Elevate the barrel on 2 or 3 courses of bricks or a simple wooden platform so the spigot sits at least 30 centimeters above ground. This seems like a minor point until you are kneeling in the mud trying to tilt a watering can sideways under a spigot that is 4 centimeters from the ground. Second mistake, skipping the first flush diverter and connecting the downspout directly to the barrel. The first water that flows off a roof during any rain event carries the highest concentration of contaminants, bird droppings, decomposed organic matter, particulates, and anything that has accumulated on the roof surface since the last rain. A first flush diverter discards this initial flow, typically the first 10 to 20 liters from a downspout, before redirecting the cleaner subsequent flow into the barrel. Skipping it doesn't make your water dangerous for garden use, but it accumulates debris and biological material in the barrel that shortens its useful life and creates maintenance issues. Third mistake, creating a barrel with no overflow outlet. Every barrel will occasionally receive more water than it holds, without a planned overflow outlet positioned near the top, a simple hole with a short pipe section directing overflow away from the house foundation. The barrel fills to the top and water overflows at the lid or wherever the weakest point is, often directing a substantial flow against the house foundation. Plan the overflow before the first rain, not after. Fourth mistake, placing the barrel in a location that makes it inconvenient to use. If the barrel is around the back of the house and the garden is at the front, you will stop using it within 2 weeks. Place it as close as possible to the primary water use. Location. If that means connecting to a downspout that is not closest to the house, connect a short length of pipe to redirect the outlet. The few extra dollars and minutes of effort pay back in years of actually using the system. The results of a properly built and consistently used rainwater collection system are not marginal. A 200-liter barrel filling completely during a single moderate rainfall event, drawn down fully between rain events for garden irrigation, represents approximately 200 liters per rain event removed from metered water consumption. In a climate with 15 to 20 rain events per year of sufficient size to fill the barrel, that is 3,000 to 4,000 liters of metered water replaced annually. At average residential water rates, that represents a real and recurring annual saving that pays back the $12 investment in the first season and continues saving money every subsequent year with zero additional cost. Scaling is linear and requires only additional barrels connected in series, a second barrel connected to the overflow of the first double's capacity. A series of 4 barrels connected in sequence along a downspout creates 800 liters of storage from a single connection point, enough to buffer a 2-week dry period between rains without drawing from the mains for garden use at all. The safety questions around rainwater use are real and deserve direct answers. Is collected rainwater safe to drink? For garden irrigation, car washing, toilet flushing, and general outdoor use, which represent the application this $12 system is designed for, collected rainwater requires no treatment and poses no practical safety concern. For drinking and cooking, additional treatment, filtration and disinfection, is required, and the system described here is not intended for potable use without those additional stages. Can roof materials contaminate collected water? Older roofs with lead flashing or certain painted surfaces can introduce contaminants. For garden irrigation, the concentrations involved are generally below levels of concern for soil and plant contact. For any use involving human consumption, test the water or use only roofs with appropriate materials. Is rainwater collection legal in your area? In most jurisdictions globally, collection of rainwater from your own roof for non-potable use is entirely unrestricted. In the small number of remaining jurisdictions, with any restrictions, those restrictions typically apply to large-scale collection or potable use, not to a single backyard barrel. Check your local regulations. But in the overwhelming majority of cases, the answer is simply yes, this is legal, and no permit is required. The history of this practice starts so early in human civilization that tracing it to an origin is essentially impossible. Archaeological evidence of rooftop rainwater collection cisterns has been found in ancient Israel, dating to approximately 3000 BCE. The Nabatean civilization that built Petra in the Jordanian desert developed sophisticated rooftop and hillside catchment systems that fed stone-carved cisterns capable of supplying their entire city through the dry season. Ancient Roman villas were designed around a central atrium with an opening in the roof, the compluvium, positioned directly above a sunken basin, the impluvium, that collected rainwater for household use as a standard architectural feature, not as a backup, as the design primary water supply for the household. Ancient Berber communities across North Africa built elaborate roof catchment systems that fed underground cisterns, some of which are still functional today, because the alternative was thirst. The Mayans built sophisticated rainwater harvesting systems into their urban infrastructure, with carved stone channels directing roof water into sealed underground choltuns that sustained city populations through dry seasons. Everywhere that humans have lived in regions with variable rainfall, which is everywhere humans have ever lived, they developed systems to capture rain when it came and store it for when it didn't. The knowledge is as old as civilization itself. The modern municipal water system is approximately 100 years old. The idea that we no longer need to understand where water comes from because it comes from a tap is 100 years old. And in that 100 years, we have managed to forget 6,000 years of knowledge about how to collect one of the most fundamental resources that falls freely from the sky, which lands us exactly where this always lands. We have built systems of such apparent reliability that we have forgotten the knowledge that predates them. Municipal water works until it doesn't. Supply chains function until they're disrupted. The infrastructure that delivers water to your tap has failure modes, drought, contamination events, infrastructure, breakdown, price escalation, that your grandparents would have had practical knowledge to navigate and that most people today face with no practical tools at all. A $12 barrel under a downspout is not a complete solution to any of those failure modes, but it is a real, functioning, productive piece of infrastructure that costs almost nothing, reduces a recurring bill, builds a practical skill, and connects the person who builds it to a 6,000-year lineage of human knowledge about managing the most essential resource on Earth. That is not a small thing to get for $12 in one afternoon. If this video made you look at your gutters differently, if it made you want to put a barrel under your downspout before the next rainfall and watch what your roof can collect, then share it with someone who pays a water bill every month without ever thinking about where the water comes from before it arrives, because it comes from the sky. It always has. It lands on your roof for free. And what happens to it after that is entirely up to you.